Hi guys, welcome back. My name is Jaspreet and I am back with another video. This week is going to be a tutorial. I'm going to show you how I make the teardrop tea light holders. In the past couple of months, I have made a whole bunch of these and I'm really done with them for a while, but I had to record this tutorial because every time I did a kiln opening, there was at least one request for, a tutorial for these holders. So here I am showing you how I make these holders. Now they have gone through an evolution. They started off really simple, and it's up to you how you want to customize them and how simple or how ornamental you want to make them. I will show you a few different variations that I've made over the years and to the current version that we are at. So that is the plan for this week. Also, I'm working on a couple of really exciting and really simple projects for the holiday season, which I plan to update obviously on my web shop. But also, I'm thinking I'll share how I make those with you. And these are relatively easier, relatively simpler projects. If you're a maker who sells their work, these are things which are an easy buy. They look cute, they're easy to make. You can make a whole lot of them in a shorter time span. So there's a lot of, so that is what my thought process was, and I'll talk more about them as we get into the holiday making season. But for now, let's get started with the tea light holder tutorial. All right, so before we start making these, let me just show you the different versions that these have been through. This was my first one that I made first year for Diwali. Um, this is like this. Some of them, sometimes they happen to be a little bit uneven, so I would just add these silicone feet to them, and then you can kind of hold them, and they sit nicely on a table with a little tea light. Now, the first year I made these, they sold really well. I sold them for about $25, and people really like them because they're not too tiny, and they kind of look good with a little tea light in here. And just to hold the tea light, I would actually put a double-sided tape at the back of the tea light and then stick it on so that it would stay. And then it can be carried in a little paper bag for gifting. But this was my very first version. Now, when I look back at it, I am so embarrassed that I made something like this. So simplistic, but honestly, this did really well the first year I made this. The next time around, I added some, extra things to it. So I added these holes here, because as you put a little tea light in here, and through these holes you can see the light reflecting onto the walls, and the little sprigs that were made out of these holes, as I made them, I just attached them onto the body here, some of them here, and then added feet to them so that again they sit. This time I don't have to worry about them rocking and adding the silicone feet, and I added these. Though this wasn't a foolproof method, because again sometimes during firing these will go a little wonky. So that happened. Let me see. Yeah, this is nice. This sits nicely. But and for both of these options, actually, you can hang them on a wall. You can put a string through like this. For this also, you can put a string through like this or through these holes. The only thing you have to remember is when you are putting it on a wall through a string, the tea light that you're putting in has to be the electric battery operated tea light, and not the actual one. It will burn off whatever you put that on. So this was version 2. Again, it did really well. I think I sold this one for about $35, if I'm not wrong, because there was an extra step, two extra steps actually, cutting out these, smoothing them out, and then attaching these little sprigs and the feet and making sure it's all nice and balanced. So this was my second version. And this year, I have these that I've made. Now, you do see two different sizes, slightly different design and variation here, but I did sell them actually at the same price point, at about $40 to $45, depending on where we are selling. This time, what I did was I added this extra little flower in here. Now, the reason I added this flower was it makes holding the tea light so much more easier, and obviously it elevates the overall look. I removed these extra sprigs that I added because they didn't do much for me, and I did not add the feet. I just made sure that they sit flat when I'm drying them. So I'll talk about drying and everything when we get there. I'm trying to find a little tea light so I can just show you what they look like. Also, I fear that I have a flu coming on, so my throat is a little bit itchy and it's hurting. I'm sorry if I'm sounding a little low. It's just because of that. I know my intro was kind of lazy, but it's just Yeah. Anyways, this is a tea light and you can just place it in here. And this is a lot more convenient. It's not going to slip around, right? I don't have to add any tea light, any double-sided tape. Like here, if you see, you have to add double-sided tape. Otherwise, this is kind of wobbly. So like I said, now I'm embarrassed that I made this. This looks okay, but again, the tea light can slip. And this is not feedback that I got from my customers. Honestly, they didn't care much for it. But for me, when I'm making and I'm putting it out in the world, as you grow, as you do more of this thing, I think these are the things that you will learn about your work and the things that you can work on, things that you can improve. So, anyway, so that's one version, and this is the other one, slightly bigger with a slightly different flower and which can again easily hold the tea light. Now, you will see that these look fairly warped, and these are the only pieces that are actually left in the studio. Everything else is sold out, so I just have the warped pieces, the seconds, which I'm not selling. These are the ones that I left here. So like I said, I made two different versions in the sense of two different sizes. But again, I'm going to tell you what the dimensions are for both of them. And even in terms of the flowers, if you see, this one has a slightly different flower. The cutter is slightly different, and the press mold that I used is also different. There was no particular reason. This were made in one batch when I was making these. So I was using the same presser and cutter for these. And then I made this after a gap, and then it just changed to a different flower and a different cutter. That's about it. Nothing beyond that. But again, it has the holes. You can hang this like this or through the holes, and they look wonderful. And they sell really well. So these are gifts. They look substantial and they look really pretty with a little tea light. And I did use them as displays for my Diwali event. I just did one in-person event market this year for Diwali, and I put them on S hooks at the back in my as part of my backdrop, and they looked really pretty. And I did sell quite a bit of these, and some of them have traveled all the way to London and different parts of the world. So people pick them up as gifts for friends and family they were meeting. So they've traveled the world, and it's exciting and it's really satisfying and gratifying to know that people are enjoying your work. Now I'm going to show you today how I make these. I'll share both the dimensions like I said for both of these, but if you'd like to see the glazing, let me know and I'll try and record the glazing process along with a couple of other pieces as well, so that there's more than just glazing this piece. You get to see glazing of other things as well. So let me know if you'd like that in the comments below. For now, let's just get started with making the teardrop tea light holders. So here's my clay slab rolled to a 1/4 inch thickness. And for this project, these are the templates that I used. Now, in terms of width, they're both the same width. The length is slightly different. Let me just tell you what the dimensions are. So for width, these are about 2.5 inches, which is about 6.5 centimeters, close to that. Oh, I mean 6.3 centimeters, 2.5 inches basically. And for the length, the smaller one is 13 inches, no, 12.5 to 13 inches. Let me see. Now, there's no particular reason why I use this. I just, cut out a slab and saw how that looked like. So this is 12 and 12.75 inches for the smaller one. And for this one, it's about, again, 2.5 inches in width, and this is 12, 13, 14, 14.25. So 12.75 and 14.25 inches. I will list it down for you so that you don't have to worry about remembering this. So these are the dimensions. Now, whenever you're rolling out your slab, just make sure that whatever length that you're using, your slab fits that length. That's all I have to be careful about. And whenever I'm making these, usually I'll make them in a batch because I have the slab of clay. I'm going to add texture to it, and then it's easy to make them in batches because you can just cut out. It doesn't take too much clay, right? So you can just cut out the strips here and then go in steps. So I'll make two, and I'll show you how I do that because I don't want to make any more of these. I've made too many of them and I'm done making these. So I'll just make two, so I have a set to show you how I do this in multiples. Again, if you're making them as multiples, for a market or for an order, I would suggest that first make one piece shape it nicely, dry it slowly, bisque fire it, and keep it as a little mold. So it's easy for you to shape the others. Then the process goes really fast if you have one initial mold. So I did have, so for example, I have this one. This is not my mold, but I just have this one where I lost the flower. Must have forgotten to add the flower, did not add all of these. So I just have this. It's easy for me to just use this as a mold and shape all the other pieces around it. Then it becomes a lot easier. Otherwise, you have to kind of keep going in and fiddling with it and making sure it's nice and even and things like that. So make your first one as a mold, so that, and make sure it dries slowly and it's not warped. This one is again warped, but make sure the first one that you make as a mold is not warped, so that you can use it repeatedly. Trust me, it'll make the whole process go so much faster. So let's start with first compressing the clay. I'm going to just clean off my rib. This is my regular rib that I use to compress the clay. I just press at an angle, going over the clay in different directions. Lift, flip, and do the same on the other side as well. This is a mid-fire stoneware clay. All right. Now I'm going to just place my uh, template here. Just mark out how much I actually need. I need this, this. So if you have like one slab and if you have to make multiples, you can just go, cutting out these strips straight up and down. So I can actually get at least 4 out of this, but I just need 2. So I'm going to just cut it here so that I can continue with my texturing process and the rest of it. So I'll just move this out of the way. All right, now to add the texture, I am going to flip the clay this way, because for me, adding the texture like this is a lot easier than to, try and add texture this way. So for the texture tool, I'm thinking I'll use my own rolling pin, the one that I designed with I'll just craft. Let me see where it is. Okay, here it is. So this is the pin that I designed with I'll just craft. I'm gonna just place it here. Again, when I'm texturing clay, I leave a little bit of clay here so that my rolling pin doesn't stick to it, and then pressing down and rolling over. There you have a beautiful field of texture. That's lovely. Okay, before I do anything, I'm going to just lift my clay to release it from the board. Okay, we have this here. Next, if you see with these rolling pins, sometimes what happens is, especially over time, you will see this wood grain texture coming through. I don't know if you can see this very fine wood grain texture that transfers onto the clay when you press hard. And I can see it here in certain areas. So what I'm going to do is just take a damp sponge, nicely squeezed, and then just go over the texture and soften it up quickly. It just takes, less than 5 seconds and you're sorted. Okay, now I'm going to bring back my template, place it here. Okay, using my needle tool, I'm going to go straight up and down. Same on this side, straight up and down, no angles required here. In fact, even for the sides, I'm just going to go straight up and down. I'm not adding any bevels to the sides for attaching, and I'll explain why when we get to that part. But you don't need to add any bevels, just use a needle tool to cut straight up and down. Okay, same with this one. Just place it here. Here I'm using the 2.5 into 12.75 inch rectangle template. Okay, cut this out here. Okay, you don't need those. All right, so if you're doing a batch, you will have a bunch of these ready here. I'll show you how I do them in steps. So once I have this done, then I'm going to take my sponge, damp sponge, nicely squeezed, and just clean off the edges, soften them actually. I don't know if you can see this edge and this edge, you can see the difference there. This is cleaned, and I like that soft transition. I don't like those, edges showing. See, for example, here you can see this is nice and soft and rounded, and I like this. I don't like it to be, I'll show you an example what I mean. For example, in this plate, if you see, you can clearly see that edge. There is a line here, there is a line here. This is made by a 6-year-old, so no judgments, but and it's a beautiful plate, okay? but you see what I mean. This is just an example I'm showing you. You can clearly see that cut here. On the other hand, if you see, this is nice and smooth. This is nice and round. And this is what I like in my work. I'm very particular about it. Also, I enjoy the process of cleaning the edges. So again, it's a very personal choice. If you like those edges, those square edges, it's perfectly all right. Nothing wrong with it, okay? Again, I'm going to do the same on this side as well. Lift and okay, for this project, I don't think you need your clay to be very, very soft. You need it to be soft, but not like, sticky soft, because if it's sticky soft, it's going to make your life a little bit difficult. So just be aware that your clay doesn't have to be too soft. My clay is not that soft. Okay, so I'm just cleaning off the sides here, adding a little bit of moisture, and then rounding off the edges. Again, it's a personal preference. You like it, you do it. You don't like it, you don't have to do it. Okay, turn this around. Okay, I'm gonna just do this one more time. All right, now I'm happy with the way it looks. I'm gonna quickly add my signature. So I'll kind of see where the center is and clean off a little bit of the texture so that I can place my signature there. Okay, this comes off. Now, here we go. Okay, that's my little signature stamp. It's just a regular silicone stamp that you use with an ink pad. Got it from my printer, local printer here. All right, so that's my signature done. Now I am going to make the holes. So this is usually the step-by-step process. I'll cut out the slabs, clean off the edges, add my signature to all the slabs, and now I'm going to start cutting out the circles here. Now for this, I use a little flower cutter. Let me just show you. Now to make the holes, I'm going to use these cutters. Now they usually come in a set, and I will link everything for you. Um, the one that I'm looking for, I can't find. I'm looking the bigger version. I'm looking for a bigger version of this one, but I can't seem to find it. I'm sure it's somewhere on the table, but anyways. So I'll use this one, and the process is actually the same. Just take a little bit of cornstarch, dip your cutter in the cornstarch because these are made of plastic and this is wet. I'm gonna go in and make 5 of these holes. Okay, 1, 2. Again, if it starts feeling sticky, just go in with the cornstarch, and they have this little plunger thingy, so you're easily able to, remove the cutout from there. So this is 3. See, it's so easy. 4. I think this is more than enough. Not enough space here. The way I've spaced them. Okay. Now here again the same thing. I'm gonna cut 5 of these out. The moment this starts getting a little sticky, I'll just dip it in cornstarch. Okay. All right. So there you have 4 cut, 4 cut, and move on to this guy. 2. It's up to you how many cutouts you want. The only thing I like to do is if I'm starting on this end with the first one, I'll start on this end. Just a design choice. Other than that, I'm not very precise about where I'm making the cuts, approximately, at a certain distance. That's about it. If you want, you can use these flowers. Oh, I've just crushed them. These flowers are little sprigs, press them in a little bit, make them sprigs, and you can attach them. I'm not going to bother with that because, again, it's extra work, doesn't really make much of a difference. Okay, now I'm not going to clean up these holes. If you see, they're not very smooth, but I'm not going to do the cleanup at this point. We'll do the cleanup later. I'll show you how I do that. So now I'm going to just turn this around. Both of them are turned around. And now I will use my serrated drip. I just dip this in water, and I'm going to make slight bevels here and here. You don't need too many bevels, just a little bit. And you may need some extra slip to attach the two, but I just add a little bit of bevel, not much. Okay, once I do this, now if you have that mold that I was talking about, that if you already made with the same thing, after bisque firing, it will shrink a little bit, so it will be easy. It will easily wrap around it. I'll show you how easy it becomes when you have a mold. Okay, if you have a mold, all you have to do is place it around this and then just seal up the top. Right, this is not the right mold, so I'm not using this. This is just for example. Okay, so but if you don't have one, then all you have to do is just pull this here like mold them with your hands, mold it with your hands. So ideally do it on a separate board so that you don't have to move the tea light holder again, right? So I'm going to just take this, shape it, and make sure you shape both the base and the top, because sometimes what happens is we just focus on how this is looking and not how the base is looking. The base can be a little wonky like that while this is perfect. So make sure that you're shaping both of them. So, and that's where having that first mold done makes life so much easier, because then you just have to press against that and you'll get the shape that you want and not having to worry about, everything being properly lined up and aligned. Now I'm going to just press these two together. Okay, let me show you here. Oh, see, I don't know what I was thinking. Okay, let me just show you here, right? This is going to warp for sure with the way I'm making it. Okay, I'm just pressing it to shape it the way I like it. And then I'm just, whatever excess clay that's come out with the scoring, I'm going to just press it against the join there using a damp sponge, clean it up, press it nicely, make sure these two sides are nicely joined, and then do the same on this side on the top as well. Okay, and then for the inside, if you don't see any slip on the inside, let me see if I can show you. Can you see the little bit of slip on the inside there in the joint? So I'm going to use that and reuse it to attach it, fill up the joint. So using my silicone tip tool, I just go in and press that back in inside that joint. Let me show you again what that looks like. Can you see that now? Right? Okay. So that's cleaned up, that's joined. Now I'm going to shape my top. I am going to bring I'm going to bring in my banding wheel here, so that's easy for me to just compress the edges and make sure that they stay where I want them to. So I'm going to just lightly press around the edges and shape them. Okay, this is one side done. Now I take another board, place it on top, slide the board out and flip. Because I just shaped that side, I have to shape this side and fix the joint here, right? So I'm going to again add take my sponge, add a little bit of moisture back in, press it along, make sure it's nicely sealed. Now if you don't have enough slip on the inside, just take a little bit of slip and just fill up that joint inside. Okay, do that and do the same thing here. Just add a little bit of moisture to the rim and then press and make sure it's nice and straight and aligned. Okay, lined up nicely the way you wanted the shape. Okay, looks okay to me. Now one last thing that you have to do before you let it set up is take a board. This is to make sure that your base is nice and flat and it's going to sit flat and not wobble. Okay, so I'm going to place my board here right opposite the top, the point here. Okay, I'm just going to place it here. Can you see what I'm doing? Okay, right. I'm going to place it here and then press, making sure there's enough space here for me to, there's enough flat area here for me to add my tea lights, to add my little holder, and to make sure that's nice and flat and it will sit flat on the base, on any flat surface. Now when I'm doing this, I am pressing here and at the base as well. Don't forget the other side. You have to press both the top and the bottom. Press here and then press here as well, because sometimes what happens is we'll press this side and we forget that we have to press this as well and it'll again be wobbly, right? So once you do that, then again one last time I'm going to shape this, make sure it's nice and the way I like it to be, want it to be. Okay, now I'm happy with the way it looks. Now I'm going to let this set up, and while this sets up, I'm going to quickly make this, and then we'll move on to the next step where I'll show you how I make the flower holder inside. Okay, for the inside. Right now it's going to dry this way for some time, and then we will, lift it and make it sit vertical. But for now, because the clay is really soft, I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to just make sure that it stiffens up before I lift it and hold it straight, like sitting on a table, okay? Again, the same thing I'm going to do. I've already done the slip and score. Bring these two together. Again, before you do that, take another board so it's easy, okay? And then just attach. I'm pressing the two sides together like this. I'm pressing like this, the two sides, okay? That's why you don't need a bevel, because if you create a bevel here, then there's nothing to press against and you have to add more slip in. So it doesn't make any sense. So do this. Then with a damp sponge, add a little bit of moisture back in here to clean it up and seal it up, okay? And then using the silicone tip tool, again, just clean off the inside. Use this to clean this. And now, once you have that done, bring in a banding wheel and just go around the edge here, making sure it stays where you want it to stay, okay? Just a slight pinching motion, slight compression. This helps with, avoiding the warping. You do it a couple of times and it knows where it has to stay. So there you go. Now place another board on top and flip. And same thing on this side as well, okay? Just clean up the join, make sure it's attached to the center, and then clean this and just compress it nicely, okay? Once you have this done, just shape it a little bit. That is done. Now with another board placed right opposite this side, just pull the clay, just make two straight lines, make sure it's nice and flat. It has a place to sit nice and flat, okay, against this board. And then you can shape it one more time. Make sure it's how you want it to be, okay? So that is done. Now this will dry slowly. Now we get on to making our flowers. All right, time to make the flowers. Now for the flowers, I usually will use either these cutters. Now this comes as a set, and I've used this to make my flower bowls. Already seen these. You can use one of these cutters. You'll probably use this one, depending on, again, how big or small you want your flower to be, or one of these star cutters as well. Again, I think this came as a set. I know there'll be people asking what is the dimension of this one. I just don't, I'm usually not very particular about the dimensions. I just go with whatever is looking proportional. So I'll try with a couple of different cutters and see which one looks most proportional to the overall piece. And this one, if you have to see, this is about 3.25 inches in diameter, whatever. This way it's 3.25. If I go with this one, this will be, again, about 3.5. So up to you which one you like. This is the second one in from the smallest. Yeah, this is smallest. This is the second size up to you, whatever you want to use. Again, how big or small your flower will be will depend on a few things. One, how soft or dry your clay is. If your clay is really soft, you'll be able to press a lot harder and you'll get a bigger flower. If it's slightly stiff, like my clay is, it's not very soft, I have to press either too hard or I'll not get that bigger flower. It won't expand, it won't press as much to give me a bigger flower. So doesn't matter. And for pressing and making those flower thingies, so for example, for this one, I think I used something like this. This is what you can use to create this kind of effect. And for these, I use this one. Doesn't matter, again, it's a personal preference. I'm not too fussy or not too particular about it. I just go with whatever I like, whatever is I can find in my tools, honestly. So let's go with this one. I'll cut out two of these because you're making two, so just do one. There's just one trick you have to remember when you're attaching the flower, and talk about it when we get to that. For now, let's just make these two holders. Now remember, the only thing you have to remember is it has to be proportional, doesn't look too off, like too big or too small, sitting inside that teardrop. And secondly, it has to be big enough to hold your tea light. That's about it. Other than that, doesn't matter. Now, to make this, I'm going to, doesn't matter. Okay, let's just go with this guy. Now these guys, I usually use them with some cornstarch because otherwise they will stick. A little annoying that way. Because it has a lot of deeper ridges, this tends to stick a lot more. So I just add a little bit of cornstarch here and even to my clay, just to make it a little bit easier, the whole process, and not as annoying. Okay, yeah, there's a lot of cornstarch there. Now to press these, what I'll usually do is just place it here with this. Now for this one, I don't know if I mentioned this when I during my flower bowl video or not, but this did, I did cut off a little bit of these here because they were too pointy, and same with this one. If you see, I've cut off some bits here. Now you can try and see if yours also have those pointy edges. If they do, just take a, your clay knife or whatever, a knife, and just slice it off. It's very easy. They just don't poke through the clay then once you do that. Okay, now to press these, I will place the one with the depression down, place my clay in here, and then this one on top. And then I usually like to press like this, standing and just pressing in gives me a nice clean press. Now, like I said, my clay is slightly stiffer, so it's not, stretching too much. So just do this and that's done. Same with this one. I don't like pressing it like this in the mold because it takes me more effort. My fingers hurt if I do that. So I just find this a little easier to do. Okay, so that's done. Let me just clean my board here. Okay, so now the next step with these, very simple. I'm going to just lift up the edges like this. Okay, and there you have it. A little flower, very simple for your tea lights. You can just make these flower holders, just the flower holders for tea lights, and sell them as part of your, markets and all. Similarly with this one, just lift and form a little holder shape here. Try and see it the more or less same size. If you want to be doubly sure, place a little tea light inside to check if there's enough room for a tea light, or there's more than enough even after shrinking, right? So these are my two holders. Okay, we place them there. Now I'm going to bring back my teardrop tea light holder. This is still soft. I can't still lift it. It is going to flop. If I lift it, it is going to press. So what I'm going to do here is, I don't want it to dry out completely before I attach the flower. So there is a way, to do it. I'm just placing it here so you can see. I think this is a better idea. Okay, let me just place it like this. And this is, again, a board is going to come in handy for you to place it and do the scoring and slipping and things like that. So again, I'm going to use my serrated rib dipped in water and score here. Ooh, I hope you can see what I'm doing. I'm just going to score it nicely. I'm just trying to keep my hands out of the way so you want to add extra slip, please go ahead, do that. I just add extra water and score again. Let me show you. So I have scored the base there. Okay, I'm going to bring my flower, do the same at the back, score it, hold on to it and score it. This is still softer, this clay is still softer, so it will be easier to score. Okay, now when I'm attaching, I want to attach it while it's still lying down like this, because I don't want the flower to be, sticking out from the back side because of the way we are going to fire. So it's up to you how you want to place the flower. You want this guy to come in the front, or you want two of these to come in the front. It's up to you. I just go with this, where I have this and the two smaller flowers beside. Let me just see, trying to shape it a little bit. Okay, and then place it here, and this board comes in handy again. You just press it and then press the flower in so it stays there. Okay, I'm just pressing. We've already done the scoring, slipping. Now you're just pressing, making sure this is nicely attached, right? There's my flower sitting inside. Okay, so that's done. That's one of the reasons I like to, you know, uh, attach the flower while it's still lying flat so that the flower doesn't come out. Let me try and explain here. Here also, if you see, the flower is sitting flat. because when you're firing this, you're firing one side. Either you fire it on the shelf sitting like this. In that case, it's advisable to add some feet here, like 4 little dots or whatever, so that they can fire like this and you can glaze the whole thing. I fire them like this. Now, the problem with firing them like this is that the problem that I saw was some of the pieces, they kind of, during firing, after firing, they compressed. They, like, how to explain it? They got pushed down a little and they got out of shape. So then I started firing them flat. And when you're firing them flat, you want your back to be absolutely flat, because I had some pieces with the backs are not flat, and the way I fired it was like this at an angle, and then that also warped the piece. So it's important to remember that this has to be flat, because you need a space to fire this flat. So there's no glaze here, there's no glaze here, and you can fire it flat. Otherwise, there are chances of this thing getting warped. So that's why when you're making it, make sure that the flower is not, sticking out from the back. Okay, so this is done. I hope I'm clear in what I'm explaining. All right, coming to this one, I'm going to do the exact same thing. Just hold this here. Okay. And then this is easier. This is a better angle for me. Score it nicely, holding it here. Same thing with this guy. I dip my rib in water every time I come in to score. Okay. And then place it here. Just see it's centered more or less. Okay. Then bring this board again here and then press. Again, I'm making sure that I'm pressing, through the entire base of the flower and not just in one point, so that this thing remains nice and flat from this side and the other side as well. So, and that's done. Okay, for drying these will dry slowly under a plastic for a couple of days. But before that, what I'll do is probably if I've made this, at the beginning of the day, I will leave it under a plastic, and then a couple of hours I'll go back and check to see how soft or how hard it is. It still needs to be soft for the next step. For that, what I'll do is, like, this is soft. I think this is the right clay moisture, because I can stand it like this. Now, if you see, like, I can see the shape changing a little bit, like the clay settling a little bit like this, and that's okay, because I just need to do that and then press this in, make sure it's attached and everything is nice and flat, and then lift it up again and place it like this. That is just to check, to make sure it has a flat base, right? Now this will go under plastic and dry very slowly. So once you've made it, let it sit for some time where it's at this uh, not leather hard, it's still softer than that, at a place where it can kind of stand up, and you can, tap the base and make sure it's nice and flat. And then once it's at leather hard, you can then go in and clean up the flower if you need to. The other thing, like I mentioned initially, was cleaning up these holes. Now for this, what I do is I've taken an old sponge and cut out a little strip like this. I'll dip it in water, squeeze it nicely. Okay, this is nicely squeezed. Now I'll take this and put it through this hole, right? And then just pull it through once. Okay, that will clean up all the clay crumbs. Let me show you if I can. Yeah. So if you see, this hole is cleaned and this hole isn't yet. You can leave it as is, but I see a little bit of this, unevenness on the other side, which bothers me. So honestly, I will add leather hard. I will go in and clean up all the holes. Again, it's up to you how much effort you want to, put into this. All you have to do is one swipe. Right now, I'm being a little careful because clay is soft. It is not at leather hard. So you just do this and out. Let me show you again, right? So those two are my clean holes, and this one still has that, in my opinion, and it still needs some work. So yeah, that's the last thing that I do before it is misfired to about 900 degrees Celsius. And then we will go on to glaze. So yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed this and you learned something new. Let me know if you'd like to see the glazing tutorial, then I'll work on that and try and put it up as soon as I can. That's all I have for you today. You have a great week ahead. This is Diwali week for me, so I'm gonna get busy with cleaning my house and setting it up for Diwali. So it's going to be a busy rest of the week for me, but I hope you have a good one too and wish you all a very, very happy Diwali. I'll see you next week with another video. Bye.